Dave Melenda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you. I have to say today I'm humbled because I had this cool guy. You know how we all say we want to have a guy for whatever it is? Well, I have this guy and it's for financing because I can't stand financing and Mark knows that. So we'll get into that, but I want to introduce the managing director and owner of Supporting Strategies, Mark Schanen. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thanks for having me, Dave.
Oh my gosh, I tell you, I'm calling this not just financing for dummies, but it's financing for big dummies because so, you know, like when I owned my last company and we had 22 people on my team and we had about 10 million in annual sales and we had, we were in Brookfield, had this awesome business going, life was good. There was all these offices and there was one office, Mark, that they would not let me in, and that was the accounting office, right? I was literally not allowed in there. And I'm like, why can't I come in? And they said, all you do is click one button and all the red for that month turns to black. And I'm like, see how easy this accounting stuff is, right? So it's so dangerous. And I am a financial big dummy. I will be the first to admit it. And so I wanted to spend some time with you because you're the opposite of that. And you have really helped my company and people that I know to kind of, better understand the financial side. So tell me a little bit about the Supporting Strategies and what you guys do and how that looks currently.
Yeah, so Supporting Strategies is actually a franchise that was started out in Boston near MIT. They started literally right across the street from MIT in a co-working space.
Okay.
Yeah, that in the early 2000s it was the Cambridge Internet Center. Now it's the Innovation Center.
Okay.
And all these companies didn't need a full-time accounting staff. They didn't need a full-time, controller or CFO or anything like that, but they needed somebody who had some chops that could come in and kind of help them talk to, angel stage investors or bankers or other, more complicated issues that you might run into as you get bigger. And so they kind of grew that business throughout the Boston area. And as time went on, they got to be like a $5 million business. So that's a really good sized accounting business,
no
right?
Kidding.
and
you're not selling anything but time, right? I mean, that's pretty much what you're billing.
Professional expertise, really. I mean, that's kind of what
it's not like you have a product you're selling or anything.
No,
right?
no, it's people's professional expertise and their time and their ability to do stuff the right way.
Absolutely.
So they brought in 2 angel investors, and one of them was the guy behind CompUSA back in the day before Dell kind of took over. He got out. And so he talked to them about franchising, and franchising is a way to kind of go into something like this and grow fast without needing to spend a ton of money on developing a sales team and all the rest of it. So each one of us, there's 77 of us now.
Oh, wow.
Each one of us owns our business, right? But we kind of have a mothership that we all sort of talk to when it comes to things like HR hiring or technology or, so you have sort of this nice broad network of people who are all kind of doing stuff the same way.
Sure.
And we also have the advantage of, I own it. So I make the decisions about how I work with a customer or, how we handle different issues that might come up and that sort of stuff. So it's sort of a nice blend of the two. I feel
so. It's not like I have a buddy that's owns Domino's pizza franchise, and I'm always asking him, I'm like, how do you make money when the mothership, to your point, is like dictating, hey, $3 for a pizza, right?
Yeah.
So you obviously have much more latitude when it comes to that direction, pricing, which clients are you partner with, things like that, correct?
Yeah. So we have absolute authority when it comes to pricing and that sort of stuff. There's rules about, what we can and can't say in some cases, but most of the time that's sort of set by the state. So like in Texas, I couldn't call myself an accountant if I don't have a CPA kind of thing. So that's why a lot of times, like in our marketing material, we'll say we're bookkeepers and controller level services.
Sure.
But everybody that I'm hiring for the most part has either a CPA background or they've got that sort of corporate accounting type background. So it's interesting.
Well, and it was awesome. So I'm a client of yours and I'm having a ball doing it. It's so nice to have somebody again, I think of people that have my back. and your group has my back to the point where we figured out a process on how to, get things so that you can invoice on a timely fashion. I'm the one holding the group up. So, so it's already the 6th of the month and I'm supposed to have my stuff. So I tell them that we're on a podcast and that's why I can't get my invoicing in, if you would.
There you go. Yeah.
So, but I love the fact that they're checking in. Hey, how's it going? What, how's your invoicing? What do you need? We see you and I have had discussions about, how to help on a tax side. So it's just there's so much comfort in having somebody like you. So I just wanted to say thank you.
I appreciate that. It really should be a partnership. I mean, anywhere that I've worked in the past, whether it's corporate America or now sort of doing my own thing, finance should be an extension of the business. It shouldn't be running the business, and it shouldn't necessarily be like, somebody you're afraid to talk to. They in some ways, they're almost like, depending on where you're at, they can almost be like a coach for your business to some degree, where they're helping you understand, okay, what could I do differently to take home more money or to, do things in a more efficient way? So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you have the people I come in contact with are awesome. So I just, again, wanted to say thanks. And it's so helpful to have somebody in your corner to be able to get those questions answered, to have somebody looking ahead, because, in my past life, when I have all these people on my team, there was always like sales and accounting, sales and whatever you want to call it, right? Operations, whatever. There was always a fight, always a war,
Yes.
We were in sales and we didn't like you, and you were in, the operations, you didn't like us. And, there's always potential for that. I'm not saying it's going to be everywhere, but it was pretty common, because I'd want to spend the money. I'm like, man, we just got a big check. Let's go spend it. And they're just like, we got to pay bills. I'm like, forget the bills, let's just, let's buy something. Right. I mean, and that's obviously where stuff goes bad, but we'll talk about that in a minute. But you brought up something, and I really wanted to kind of unpack that with you, Mark. You transitioned from corporate America to this. And I look on your LinkedIn profile, and we talked a little bit about GE. You worked there. JP Morgan. I mean, and then I see pre-med. I'm like, oh my gosh, this guy's like, there's a lot to him that I didn't know. So my big question to you, and a lot of people listening usually want to know, that transition from corporate America to, owning your own business. How did that come about for you? What did that look like in your world?
So interesting you should ask that. So my background, I started my career at Bank One probably about 3 months after Jamie Dimon started as the CEO there.
Okay.
And the bank was a hot mess when I got there. Like, that's putting it mildly. We wrote off $6 billion in the first 3 months because of either bad accounting or managerial issues or other things. Like, there was like $100 million of what they call like real estate fixtures that disappeared, that they don't know where they went. So like gosh. Those very expensive Aeron chairs back in the early 2000s, like they just disappeared and we don't know where they went. It's like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
So
you're not sitting on one right now, are you?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm not.
I just want to make sure.
But it was interesting. So I got sort of a ground level view, and they didn't have a budgeting process. They didn't have a planning process. They had no sort of monthly or quarterly reporting or any of the rest of it. And I started in corporate management and planning and reporting. So I got to kind of see all that firsthand and cut my teeth in what was sort of like a hot environment, I guess, at the time. A lot of hours and definitely sort of paid my dues. And then as they merged with JP Morgan, I was part of the merger integration team for their high net worth segment. So it was sort of, what's the financial impact of this merger, and then what's the non-financial side? Like, how do we brand ourselves, and what mutual funds do we want to keep, and all the process related junk that you got to do when you have a merger, right?
Right. Yeah.
Two different businesses have two different ways of doing things. How do you change that?
Yeah. Who wins?
Right. Yeah. Without pissing anybody off as you're doing it. So I did that, and then everything was kind of moving to New York, and I had kind of determined I didn't really want to live in New York. And so I moved back from Chicago to Milwaukee, and I got a job with GE, who I swore I would never work for. My dad was a GE engineer for 35 years. And I kind of knew what I might be getting into.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
But the people that I interviewed with, I really liked. They were very collegial. It was almost run like its own little small business. The people who'd been there weren't there's an image that comes with GE that may or may not be entirely accurate, where
Sure.
they churn through people, they constantly rotate where they're working and all the rest of that. This was actually a team that was pretty long tenured, and they'd been
Okay.
there for 10 years in some cases. So
Sure.
um, we were always sort of our own little island until GE sort of hit some tough times, and then all of a sudden everybody was looking for life rafts and businesses that were working well, and ours happened to be one of the ones that was working well.
Wow,
So
nice.
it suddenly became a lot more corporate, and I started not to enjoy it as much. And then when they
Okay.
went through their last restructuring, rather than taking a role in Chicago, I ended up just kind of taking my package and walking away.
Okay.
And then I
Yeah.
figured I'd start talking to some of the headhunters that were out there that had been
Okay.
calling
Sure.
me for a while.
Sure.
And I looked at a couple private equity CFO roles. And some of them required moving, some of them didn't. And, I wasn't completely opposed to it if it was for a few years kind of thing. And then we come back. But then I got a call from a franchise broker, franchise coach,
Okay.
right? And the franchise coach said, I want to talk to you about your future. And I was thinking, I don't want to own a McDonald's or a Wendy's, right? And that's what you think, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's what I would have
When
thought.
you hear
Absolutely.
franchise, I
Yeah.
don't want to own a fast food restaurant. I
Right?
did that in high school. I'm not doing
Yeah.
that again.
Yep.
So he talked to me about a couple of different businesses, and this is one of the ones that just really resonated with me because I knew the operational side of what I'd need to do. What was hard was I had to transition into how do I sell, right?
Yep.
I mean, you do a little bit of selling if you're in the corporate world and you're, dealing with, other individuals and other stakeholders. You've got to kind of be somewhat persuasive that this is the right thing to do. But, this is very different, right?
Sure.
Like I actually
Sure.
have to get out there and network and meet new people and maybe push myself a little bit outside my normal comfort zone, right? So
is that normal for you to do that? I mean, the networking piece, the selling piece. I saw that you're a Sandler President's Club member, as am I. So, you're immersed in a sales training type atmosphere, but your personality kind of really either, pushes you forward or can stop you. So I'm just curious, how did you, when you saw that, or when you were working on the model, did you go in eyes wide open, understanding what you were getting yourself into? Did they tell you stuff that you needed to do?
Yeah, so that was one of the other selling points really in the franchise for me was there was a weekly call that we had called Talking Sales where we would kind of all talk about different deals that we had that were out there. So it was an opportunity for us to kind of get, and we also are huge partners with Sandler. Like we require everybody that goes through and becomes a managing director who buys a franchise to go and get Sandler training.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So they have to do like a 2 to 3 day boot camp. And then
Sure.
I did some local reinforcement training. And,
Sure.
I also picked up a lot from you, to be honest. Like, I think
thank you.
Your background is really, really strong for coaching and teaching somebody through that stuff. So like
Sure.
I picked up nuggets from you. I picked up nuggets from the local Sandler trainer.
Awesome.
So there's bits and pieces where,
Yep.
If you're sort of a systemic thinker, which I definitely am, I'm a high D and a high C, right? Like if you look at my disc profile, I'm like 78 in both of them. So task oriented to the
opposite of me.
extreme.
There it is. That's why we attract total opposites. So,
yeah. No S in me at all, really, to speak of. So, and coincidentally, most of my clients are Ds.
There you go.
But, you find out very quickly sort of, okay, within the first 3 months or so of Sandler, like you start to develop your blind spot radar and you realize, okay, this is something that I need to work on. And I need to, and honestly, if I would have had some of the training and tools now, 2 years into this that I would have had in corporate, like my corporate life would have been probably even easier than it was, right?
Okay.
Like I think, I've learned so much in the past 2 years just in terms of, dealing with different disc styles and identifying them and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that was a huge part of sort of my learning curve when I first started this.
Awesome. So looking back, could you ever see yourself going back to corporate America? Wow, I didn't think I'd get that kind of like delay. I thought for sure it was going to be a no way. Interesting.
The main reason why I would consider it is for benefits like health and that kind of stuff. You know,
That's
there is a certain degree of, you know, comfort in having sort of a regular paycheck and that kind of
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
I got to tell you, I would have a very hard time fitting into most cultures right now,
Sure.
just because I have gotten used to kind of operating and making decisions and
Right.
doing what needs to get done, and
Right.
not. So if it's a typical sort of Mother May I corporate,
Yeah.
like lead from the center type culture, there's no way I
Sure.
could work for a
Sure.
company like that again. So
Sure.
I'm not going to say never, but
Yeah. Yeah.
unlikely.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think of the people listening, you know, and how it resonates with me in that you have these choices in your life of where you're going to go, and we start early. You know, I mean, I was at the company that I started and owned and sold. You know, I started when I was like, when I started working with my partner, then, you know, boss at the time, and I was there 28 years, you know, so and I don't know what it's like to be looking all over, unhappy. And, you know, obviously you have bad days. Everybody has bad days. And there were plenty of days where I'm like, man, I would love to be a cart boy at Walmart right now, you know, and just push carts around and not have to think as much as I'm thinking now. No disrespect to Walmart cart boys. It's just one of those things that, you know, for me, I couldn't do anything else. And like
Right.
you talk about your personality, you know, and I use DISC a ton. And, you know, I'm certified in doing it. And when I work with my clients, I was laughing because in prep for this, I'm like, you know, on Mark's, you know, LinkedIn profile, it talks about analysis. So I'm like, you know what? There's a chunk in my DISC assessment that talks about analysis. They take 12 of the most common behaviors in business and then they rank you in them. Well, analysis for me was number 11 out of number 12.
Wow.
So I'm so at the bottom, and that's why I have to, you know, early in my career and early in probably most people's careers, our self-awareness is pretty, you know, not there.
Yeah.
We think we can do everything. We don't
Yeah.
need anybody. You know, we're the best, and I'm really no different. Fortunately, over time, I learned that I started to really have some self-awareness issues. So I started to work on that, and DISC really helped. But this is a prime example of you are fantastic at analyzing data, and I have less than, if there was a less than zero interest, that'd be me. But you know, if that camp existed, if there was a help group for data less people, that's totally me. And I just have to be okay with that. It doesn't mean I'm worse than you, doesn't mean I'm better.
Yep.
You know, it just means that, hey, you're good at this and I'm good at something else. And I
Having
think
the
that,
humility to admit that you have a weakness is a huge, huge
right,
strength for most people if they have it. You'd be
right.
surprised, though, how many people do not.
And when I coach people, I still coach people to this day. They have zero. I mean, my next book's going to be on business blind spots. They have zero blind spots in their mind. They have complete self-awareness in their mind, you know, and you go through like an EQ, an emotional quotient, and they're like so low, they think that's wrong. I mean, you know, it's just really hard, but that's, if you can't get to that point, and that's where it seemed like you probably got to that point where you, when you left when you left GE, we'll call it, and you still could have went to another corporate position, there was something there that drew you to try this entrepreneurial stuff. So I think that's so cool, because I'm guessing, you know, we're in the COVID-19 type of atmosphere right now. There's probably a lot of people going, man, number one, am I going to get called back? Number two, what's it going to look like? And number three, do I even really want to go back?
Right.
You know, so that's where it's like, man, is business ownership, is this weird thing, if entrepreneurship that most people can't spell, but is that really something that I could be, you know, built for? And that's what I think is so cool about some kind of personality assessment. We use DISC to be able to determine, are you built for that? So
And that's really important too. I think, you know, part of being an entrepreneur is being intellectually curious and understanding that, hey, I'm going to have to learn every single day.
right.
Right. If you're
Yep.
not willing to do that, and you're not
Yep.
willing to put in extra hours, sometimes at night or on weekends,
Yep.
you got a tough road ahead. It's
Yeah.
not going to be, it's not
Yeah.
going to be 8 to 6 or whatever you may have done in
Right.
corporate.
What was your biggest struggle then from transitioning? I mean, you talked about some of the networking and sales and some of that. What was, if you had to put one, kind of word out there, one sentence or whatever, one concept, what was the hardest piece for you in that transition?
I mean, for me, it was probably, I kind of had a sense for what I needed to do on a day-to-day basis and that kind
Okay.
of thing. Having to just sort of hold myself accountable to that, like that part of stuff is interesting, right? Because
Yeah.
all of a sudden you need to break that down into pieces and understand, like I knew in aggregate where I needed to go, right? But
Yeah.
then what are the concrete steps I got to take between now and,
Yeah.
2 years from now to get there, right? Like
Right.
that, when you're leading an organization, it's different than when you own the organization, and all of a sudden
Right.
you start second guessing yourself and asking questions about,
Yeah.
did I really
Yep.
do the right thing there, right?
Yep. Exactly.
And if
Yeah.
you're in corporate America, you're just sort of like, well,
Yep.
I can defend what I did, right?
Right.
It's
Yep.
different. I don't need to defend what I did to anybody but myself, right?
Right. Yep.
And win, lose, or draw, it's on me, right?
Right.
And that mentality is certainly a little bit of a thing you've got to sort of adapt to.
Sure.
Even in corporate America, like if you may own your business to a certain degree or your division or whatever,
Sure.
um, or your line or whatever role you're in, but
Right.
it's different when you actually have to not just own a portion of what you're doing, but like all of a sudden you got to worry about HR issues. You got to worry
Right.
about you know there's a lot there's a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that
Absolutely.
as a small business owner maybe you might have taken for granted if you were in a bigger company.
Yeah, for sure. And I remember, that I can still remember the day, Mark. It was a Tuesday, and I sold my company to my shares to my partner. And I'm sitting out in some restaurant in Delafield, Wisconsin, and it's 2 o'clock on a Tuesday. And he's like, "So what are you gonna do?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I guess what am I gonna do?" Right? I mean,
Yeah.
there was this kind of 28 years came to a culmination this day, and so it was just there was never really a question of what I wanted to do. I really had this passion to coach, but it's because of the reason that you had talked about right there. I mean, I run into so many people. And that's why I wrote my book, Growing on Purpose, because I run into so many people that are growing by mistake.
Yeah.
And to your point, how do you navigate, as a small business owner, whatever you sell, whatever you provide, whatever, how do you navigate to get from A to B if you've never done it before? I feel like I'm in a sailboat. I have no clue what any of the instruments are. I don't understand the wind. I don't understand the waves. I really don't understand much. So what do you do is you start finding people that do understand it, right? So
Yeah.
that's where I jumped in with you, because you understand that. I have some people that help me on the social media side. I have some people that, you just start to find people that you can, that can come alongside you. So I'm assuming that's kind of how you do it. How do you integrate your team into a client's team, though? That seems like that could be a potential issue.
It can be. It depends on the client. I mean, every client's going to be a little different. I have one or two where they actually have a finance director on staff, right?
Okay.
So we have to interface with them and basically be their arms and legs and help them with sort of the mechanical
Sure.
stuff. There's other cases where we are the finance department.
Okay.
And so,
Like me.
yeah, right. Like you. Exactly.
You
Like,
are completely the finance department. So
we do all the billing and collecting
yep, you
and
do everything. Yep. If there
tables and
was
stuff. You
more,
can
hey, if there
handle,
was
but
more, I'd have you do it. I mean, if there was
yeah,
if you want the HR piece, you can have it, So
yeah.
it's just me. So, what you can have fun with that. But I was just curious how how the team, because the people that I integrate with, it's almost like, I mean, I feel like they have known me for a long time, and we hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
There wasn't like this uncomfortable, clunky relationship. I mean, and I don't know if I just got lucky, if this just happened, or if that's a typical expectation for a lot of your clients.
Well, I mean, what we usually do is we just kind of we have an onboarding call and we kind of walk through. Okay, here's a couple ways we can communicate. Whatever works for you, you tell us, right?
Yeah.
We'll customize that for you and we'll document that. And then, the thought is that there's sort of a team attached to you. So you've got more than one person to reach out to, and then the common email address and some other stuff, right? That
Right. Yeah.
it all kind of makes it so it's relatively seamless. We try to make it as painless as possible. We even do like the Netflix mailers, if you remember back in the day when they actually sent DVDs. So you can do that with your documents too if you want. So
Oh,
like
okay.
here's an envelope, right? Send it in every week.
Oh, wow.
And
Nice. Okay.
for some people that's they don't need accounting
Sure.
every single day, right?
Sure. Yep.
Um, and so stuff like that works too. Or we have a lot of digital document capture and stuff. I mean, the world's changed quite a bit. One of the biggest differentiators between my clients is how comfortable are you with technology, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
are you cool using your smartphone to snap a picture of a receipt, or do you need to
Yep.
send that to us, right?
Right.
Like what
Yep.
works better for you? You tell me, and then we'll figure out a process to go with it. And
Receipts. What are those?
yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh, you used the why do you gotta swear on my podcast? I mean, that's
Sorry.
just crazy. That's a receipt.
At least
What's
it's not a 4-letter word.
Yeah. Oh, that's a 1099. That's just as bad. So
Yeah.
cool. Well, that's funny. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's so seamless. And again, every chance I get, I'm an advocate for you because it's just I can't even explain, it's hard enough to navigate our business the way it is.
Yeah.
And like I said, I run into a lot of my clients. They're so good at what they do, whatever their craft is, whatever their trade is. But then
Yes.
there's all these ancillary chunks that they have to either, you know, pass off to somebody and delegate, or get them done themselves. And the people that try and get them done themselves tend to never get out of that funk, because they're always in that funk. And it's so relieving and comforting to, and it costs money though. I mean, I have to say, it's not like,
Yeah.
you're not volunteering to do my work for me, nor should you. And so I know that there's a cost to it, but I have to realize that I charge more per hour to coach than you charge me. So in the end of the day, and the numbers are arbitrary, if it's, $200 for me for an hour to talk to somebody, and you charge me 100, and again, whatever the numbers are, doesn't matter, I'm still making $100 an hour on that deal.
Yeah.
And that's how, do you run into a lot of people that resist that thinking and they want to do everything themselves?
I do actually. Or they think they can get away just paying like a virtual assistant or something
Yes.
like that. And
Yep.
I mean, look, that's fine, right? Like
Yep.
I was talking to somebody one day who's spending, probably north of $400 a month on virtual assistant, and they're probably not just doing their bookkeeping, but you
Yep.
look at that and you kind of scratch your head and you say, and then you're still doing a lot of the oversight and a lot of the corrections and everything yourself. It's like,
Right. Yep.
what's your time worth to you? Right. You
Yep.
got to ask yourself that. And, I do run into what the hardest sell for us usually is the person who's been doing it themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that having somebody else do it for you is sure. That's one way to squeeze the lemon in terms of your profit, right? You can say, okay, I'm going to keep my costs as low as humanly possible.
Sure. Yep.
And some people that works, right?
Yep.
Maybe there really isn't a market for your service, but if that's the case, like,
Yeah.
For most people, the case would be if you get a couple more clients or customers, or you sell more product or whatever in a month, because you're not spending 5 hours a month doing your books, like it compounds on itself, right? This, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things where you just got to be a little smart about it.
Well, and that's the sad part about it is, like, I know people I have a virtual assistant, and I'm glad to say, and I have no apologies for it, that she is in the US, and she has actually a master's in communication, and she's like $65 an hour. And somebody's like, oh my gosh, you can go to the Philippines for $4 an hour. And I'm like, absolutely you can. I choose not to. Whether it's the same value, I don't care. I'm not even going to open this discussion. I want to, partner with people that are going to add value to my business, add value to me. And again, not that somebody in the Philippines can or can't. It has nothing to do with that. I need somebody with a master's, I mean, I want to surround myself with smart people so that they can tell me what to do. And, it's kind of like, why, it just I love that about you guys is you tell me what to do and I'm going to do it. You know, I'm not
Right.
going to sit there, and I'm sure you have plenty of people that think they know better. And it goes back to our self-awareness and blind spot thing. I know that I don't like accounting and numbers and blah, 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 and I'm okay with it. I'm glad that that you do like them. So, that's a cool piece. I just don't want to do it. And,
Yeah.
if I had to do it, I don't even know if I could. I mean, that's where it's like you get to a point where,
Or you have to be so focused on it that takes
yeah.
up so much of your energy and mental capacity that you're
Oh,
like, for that 4 hours, like you
oh my
have to be
gosh.
just myopically focused on it or else it's not going to get done right. And that's
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like, you could do that or, in my case, like, marketing or digital, media management
Yep.
and coaching and that kind of
Yep.
stuff, right? Sales coaching, like all of those types of things. I have no
Right.
problem whatsoever working with somebody else to help me with that because I know
Yeah.
it's an area that I need to work on, right? And you know,
Absolutely.
if it's possible for me to outsource like my contract management and all that kind of stuff, I do, right?
Sure.
Like I don't even question that, right?
Right.
Sure, I know how to review a legal document. I don't want
Right.
to, right?
Yeah, that's like doing your own attorney stuff, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy. It's
And
just,
then if they screw up, they have errors and emissions insurance. So,
yeah, and you don't, you got
right.
nothing, right?
Right, exactly. Right.
It's just people ask about, some people ask me like, why do I need a coach? They're asking about themselves, and I'm not a hard sell in any way, shape, or form. When someone asks that, I kind of do the Sandler negative reverse. I'm like, you probably don't.
Yeah.
Right. But the reality is I think about it and I think, my favorite basketball player of all times is Michael Jordan. I think he's the best basketball player ever. The reality is if he needed, what possibly could Phil Jackson have added? What value could Phil Jackson add to Michael Jordan's game? The reality is he did add value,
Mm-hmm.
read the book, understand more about it. Maybe he could have got along without him, but every pro sport, every pro athlete, Tiger Woods has a swing coach. He probably has 5 coaches, right? Because he wants to be at the top of his game.
And they all change up their coaches from time to time too. So if you have a coach that's not resonating with you,
Right.
like
Absolutely.
maybe you
Yeah.
need to think about, maybe coaching didn't work for you before with a
Right.
different coach or whatever. Maybe it was
Right.
just their style. Maybe it was, you know,
And that
what you
brings
were
up a
getting.
that brings up a really good question. I know I do month to month. I don't have anybody that I try and lock in for like some long, ridiculous contract. What's your situation like on a contract basis? Is that a month to month type thing, or do you need a longer, kind of runway to be able to get, successful at it?
It really depends. I think, when we're doing like a typical sort of hourly engagement or something like that, like,
Okay.
we'll bill by the hour. It's not a big deal. If we're doing a fixed fee engagement, usually we try to have that sort of average out over the course of the contract. So
Okay.
we'll renew the contract every year if it's hourly or not hourly, but the fixed fee ones, we usually have a cancellation fee attached just because 9 times out of 10, no matter what anybody tells you about their books being clean when you take them over, they're not clean.
Hey,
and
case in
whether they
point,
know
Lake
that or not,
Linda.
it's true, right? Like, I mean, you've run
Yep.
into this before, right? From
Absolutely.
personal experience that sometimes,
Yep.
stuff isn't where you thought it was, or
Yep.
things that should be done weren't done or whatever, right? And, that takes my staff time, which,
Right. For sure.
obviously has a cost attached to it, right? And there are things that we will make sure that we're doing right, and a lot of times we have to go backwards to go forward.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, an hourly contract is generally going to be month to month, and it can be terminated by either party at any time.
Gotcha.
Fixed fee, sort of the same thing, except we might have a termination clause in there, just
Sure.
because. I mean, if there was upfront costs or anything
Yeah.
like that. And then some of the tech vendors we work with, like they'll do an annual contract where they'll give you a discount on the technology.
Okay.
And if you do it for a year, it's cheaper than if you do it month to month. So like in those situations
Sure.
too, it might be
Yeah.
a fee, but
But that's up to the individual person
yeah.
then, correct?
Yeah.
That makes it a whole lot easier to decide how you want to move forward. It's just, I remember that, we struggled at my old company with one coach that we hired, and it was just all the money up front. And well, it was a failure. It was a failure. And then what happens in most companies is, well, we tried that. We're never going to do that again, right? So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, coaching in general, training, whatever it is, outside influence becomes like, you absolutely not. We're not going to do that. And again, that's fine if that's what you want to do. You can't get mad at the rest of the world then if life's not, your company's not going in the direction that you want.
Yeah, right, right. And I would say that, if you're talking about that sort of a situation, you're instead of blaming either the process or maybe the individuals behind the process, you're just throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right?
Right.
Like
Yep.
you're basically saying that it's all the same and it's not, right? I think
Right.
anytime you're dealing with people, things are always going to be different, right? Depending on who the
Yeah.
person.
And I'm trying to tell my clients and people that I run into is, hey, you know what? We really can't control other people, but look inside and see, did you do everything the best possible way that you could do? And that's where I think it really starts to get a little bit ugly is no one likes looking in. It's way
Painful.
easier. Yeah, it's way easier to go, oh my gosh, Mark, you have this, and this wrong. And, especially like I do a ton of conflict resolution work. And when we have two people that can't talk to each other and they start to elevate, right? Well, I don't like this about this person. Well, you think I do that, it's like, oh my gosh, it's just out of control in 3 minutes because we have zero, emotional quotient at that point. Our emotional intelligence is like non-existent.
Yep. Yep. And then you get into persecutor and persecutee and right. Like
Love it. Judge and jury. I got the gavel.
right.
I got everything, I got
Yeah.
tools right in front of me. So, but I think about, I'm going to make sure that I ask this question because like, I'm thinking about if somebody that's starting a business, somebody that's growing a business, are there some things that are like people tend to miss early on? I remember when I first started my company, this company that I Positive Polarity back in 2012, I went to probably whatever that was and spend the money on getting my tax ID. You get your whatever that, and it was over the online or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I thought about the money side, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I know, how hard can this be? That's the first thought in my head.
Right. Right.
I should have jumped in way back then. But what do you, what do you see as like a couple of things that advice or key information that you could tell somebody, whether they're in the start mode or the growth mode, to help them on the financial side?
Probably the biggest thing is regardless of how you set up your company, whether it's an LLC or an S Corp or a C Corp or whatever, you always want to have that sort of segregation between your personal finances and your business finances. So always, 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 always separate credit card,
Okay.
separate checking account, period, full
Yep.
stop, right?
Okay.
Never should one touch the other, right? And
Oh, I should have more than one account, huh?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. Kidding, I do. Fortunately, I do.
Yeah. Main reason being, if you're ever liable for something, it proves that the LLC will actually protect you in the court of law, right? So if you're thinking about starting a company, one of the great local resources that we have is WCTC Small Business Center.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Russ over there in the business that he runs, but he has a program called Fast Start, which is actually really cool.
Okay.
Where he'll kind of go through, here's how you file for an EIN with the state and with the
sure. Okay.
all that kind of stuff, right? And then
LegalZoom, that's what it was, right?
okay.
Yes, sorry,
Yep.
I just remembered. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's totally okay. But like he
Yep.
goes through all that sort of
Okay.
stuff, right?
Great.
And one of the big things that I think people make a mistake on is that the other thing is making sure that you're insured properly.
Okay.
It might be a couple $100 initially as you're kind of getting things started out, and you'll probably be at their minimums for everything.
Yeah, sure.
But having that sort of protection in place so that you yourself are not going to end up in a problem spot.
Gotcha.
And then, I mean, the other basic stuff is just sort of, is there a market for what you do and is it sustainable? Right.
Yeah.
Like right now, if you wanted to create a lot of hand sanitizer and PPE equipment, sure, there's a market for it, but that market's quickly going to get saturated at some point, you hope.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure. So, you got to be smart about what you're doing, and it never hurts to talk to a CPA, somebody like me who does more the accounting and bookkeeping and that kind
Sure.
of stuff, so that we can
Yeah.
kind of just walk through how you're doing stuff.
Excellent.
Worst case scenario, you learn something
Yep. Yep.
that you might not have thought of otherwise.
Sure. Yep.
And you want to make sure that you surround yourself with other business owners if you can too, because you'll learn stuff just through them, through osmosis, I feel like.
Well, and you talked about that before, that accountability piece. I think that you kind of struggle with at the onset, and there's roundtables, there's groups, there's so many things out there, whether you pay for it or some are free, whatever. But to align yourself with people that will come alongside you and will help you. I learned so much from my former business partner. I was lucky it was on the job type training, and now I'm able to take that intel and share it with other people. I get calls every week from somebody that's got a question, that needs something, and sometimes I can help them, and sometimes I pass them to somebody like you or my attorney or whatever. So
Yep.
are you getting those kind of calls as well? Hey, Mark, I need this question answered. And is it sometimes it's a real simple question and it's an easy answer, and sometimes there's a little bit more to it? How do you deal with those things?
Usually my MO is that I've got 2 or 3 people in various fields that I can refer business
Sure.
to.
Cool.
And I let them kind of make the decision, because I understand that, there are times where you're not going to like that guy after you talk to him, or you may. So I want to make sure that I kind of steer them in the direction of, okay, this person's really good at X, right?
Right. Yeah.
Here's 2 other names though, in case for whatever reason you don't like them.
Sure. Yeah.
And I try to do that with, I try to surround myself with other people who are professional service providers. That's actually a big part of our BD philosophy, actually.
Okay. Sure.
Is what we call evangelist development or center of influence development, whatever you want to call it.
Sure.
It's kind of the same thing, right?
Okay.
People who are similar to you, maybe not identical, right? And I always bristle a little bit when people are like, "Oh, that's my competitor. I can't talk to them," right? Like,
Sure.
you would be shocked how often I find good business partners in CPA firms and other people who supposedly do bookkeeping and accounting services and advisory, right?
Sure.
And I think, there's always room at the table for you to know at least a couple other folks. So we tend to lean pretty hard into that. And I always try to build my Rolodex or virtual Rolodex or CRM with different contacts that can do different things.
It's so awesome to have that group around
Yes.
you, to be able to,
Well, it makes you look better, right? Like, hey, my client's having trouble. They're getting sued by an employee. Here's 2 labor and employment attorneys, right? Like,
Yeah.
both of whom can litigate, right?
Yeah. Well, the contact you gave me for my tax stuff is working out awesome. So again, I thank you for that, because we might, if we don't know a guy, and if we have to go to, this will date me, the yellow pages, right, to look under able accounting, or whatever.
Yeah.
The A's, and you're like, how do I possibly do this? So it's so much more helpful to have somebody alongside you to be able to kind of guide you through those tough steps, because we can't know everything. I mean, we just can't, but we're expected to, because I've never had the bank or anybody say, oh, don't worry. If I say I didn't know I was supposed to do that, the IRS has never said, oh, Dave, don't worry about it. Oh, I thought you knew. Just we'll start moving forward this way, right?
Yeah, right.
There isn't that. You don't get those get out of jail free cards with most of those places. So
yeah, especially when it comes to payroll and things like that. I mean, those are places where you absolutely the cost relative to the risk.
Taxes.
Weigh those 2 real closely.
Yeah. Cool. Is there any other comment, anything for anybody that you want to share? But we'll start coming in for a landing here. Is there anything that you can think of that really helped you, or something that you want to pass along, some of your knowledge to people listening? And love to you share whatever you feel would add value to them.
Yeah, I think, you've touched on it a few times here, but knowing your blind spots and understanding your emotional intelligence, and understanding that not everybody wants to be communicated the same way that you like to communicate, like that, that is huge, right? I tend to be a visual person, right? And I deal with people every once in a while where they're auditory and they want to hear what I have to say, right? They don't care about the pretty charts and graphs or any of the rest of it, right? And you've got to be flexible enough to kind of adjust to that. And
Right.
same thing with disc and personality styles
Yep.
and all the rest of that, right? And I
Yeah.
think spending some time with somebody like you or that type of a trainer is
Sure.
huge
Sure.
for their long-term development and success, regardless of whether or not they're in sales or they're in
Right.
management or they're in just day-to-day sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like understanding how you talk to other human beings is probably 95% of business, I feel like.
Right. Well, and
So,
the statistic shows 85% of our success is due not to our drive, our education, or our passion, but it's due to how well we communicate.
yeah.
And so I do a ton of communication training because of the fact that how many times have we sat down with somebody, to your point, and we haven't connected with them. We've tried, they're completely opposite personality than we are, and we just can't. And then there's those people that you met like for the first time, and you're just like, man, I feel like I've known you my whole life. That's
Yeah.
personality. And so if we are, the more aware we are of that, the more success, to your point, that we're going to have. I run into people all the time that, two people talking, one's talking in, I say, Russian, and another in English, and they're missing each other so much. And then they walk away from the interaction and they're just as confused and just as frustrated. And then they kind of start blaming, where it's easy to blame the other person. So
Yeah.
that self-awareness is really awesome. So cool. So if somebody wanted, Mark, to get in contact with you, what's the best way for the listener to reach out to you and, get a virtual coffee, have a question that they want, want to learn more about your services? What's the best way to connect with you?
So there's two ways probably that are easy. First is to go to our website, which is supportingstrategies.com and then /Milwaukee.
Okay.
So that'll take you to the little thing on the right about us and about me on the right. And then there's a link to my email, or else you can email me directly. And my email is mschanen @supportingstrategies.com. So it's nice and long.
Yeah. Man, when I did positive polarity, people just like, they have that like little glare in their eye when you say that positivepolarity.com, right?
Yeah, it's fun when you have to type that in on every single website password.
Right, exactly. So either your website or email are the best two ways to reach out, and they'll be in the show notes. So anybody that wants definitely to jump out and have that connection with you. I typically, have the first conversation with somebody and try and fix as much as I can for them for free on the first time. Is that typically how you do it as well, or how do you tend to work that first meeting?
Yeah, I mean, usually our first meeting is my just kind of getting to know what they're doing today.
Okay.
And that's a huge part of, okay. And then there's an operational consult that kind of goes into what we do. Like, how do we fix this if it's broken, or what isn't working or is working, and what do you like and not like? That's all sort of part of our initial conversation. But
Gotcha.
in my case, I'm not necessarily, I could give them all the knowledge in the world about how to mitigate fraud and how to deal with, their day-to-day stuff.
Sure.
Doesn't mean they're going to do it, right? It still takes time and effort and energy. So in some ways, I can spill as much candy in the lobby as I want, and it doesn't really matter. They still need to figure out how to do this themselves in a way that's efficient.
Awesome.
So.
Well, I feel like I'm still a big financial dummy, and I'm cool with that. What I feel way better about is I have this great place, and I have this comfort in this relationship with you to be able to cover me, because again, I will not be able to be, good at everything. I'm sure there's hundreds of financial people, or books, the dummy series, right? Whatever. And there's these topics, right? Finances is at the top of my list. It always will be. You'll be proud to know that I'm 55 years old, Mark, and I've never once balanced my checkbook. So some people freak because, like my dad, he said, if you're not to the penny, there's a problem, right? And I'm like, what do you mean? It's a penny. Oh my gosh. So he'd invest days to try and find this penny, right? Yeah. So not me. I'm completely different. He's not right. I'm not right. Neither one are right or wrong. It's just the way it is. So the best question that I have for you, and the last one for the day is, what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
I have perfect pitch, or I used to have perfect pitch. I don't know if I still do. I was
Uh-oh.
in
I don't know what that means.
chorus in high school, and so
Okay.
I had like a 4-octave range, and I used to be able to be a pretty solid singer. So
Wow. So is
yeah,
this like a nighttime thing for you? Do you wear a
no, not
cape?
at
Is
all.
this like fighting
I'm
crime or
not
what's going on
rehearsed in
here?
a long time, but it used to be that I would always be on key and in tune, and
Oh my
yeah,
gosh. Now
yeah.
that's rare, hey?
Yeah, I used to have really good ears. I don't know if I still do. All the tinnitus and everything is probably starting to set in after too many shows, but
So do you
yeah.
want to sing us something or should we
No,
just
I'll
wait on that
pass.
one?
We'll save that over a couple beers on karaoke
Okay.
night.
All
There
right.
you
Well,
go.
the next time, maybe our next podcast will feature just perfect pitch people
There
and
you
we'll
go.
invite you back. So
There you go.
awesome. Well, this has been really fun. I so appreciate, I was really nervous trying to figure out how to make, finances fun for me. You guys do it all day. And I have to say, you did a great job at it. So I appreciate it. For
Thank you.
anybody that wants to reach out to Mark, I would so encourage it. The thing we didn't even talk about with him is how dialed in and connected he is. I sit with him and he goes, "Hey, do you know this guy? Do you know this guy? Let me introduce you to this guy." I love that giving mentality. So if you want to learn more about his business, great. If there's somebody that you'd love to learn more about that he might be connected with in the southeastern Wisconsin area, and probably even outside of that, when you hear Chicago and different things like that, just reach out to Mark and thank him for his wisdom, and then make sure and ask him what you want. And again, Mark, I totally appreciate your time for
Thanks.
hanging out with us. So
No, I appreciate being on the show. It's always fun to give back a little bit because I've learned so much from you. So
well, thank
yeah,
you.
happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, enjoy the rest of the day, and we will be in touch soon.
All right. Thanks.
Take care.
You too.